So welcome to today's video, and today we are working on the XJ40 and we are going to be replacing the rear gearbox mount. So you can see there, that's the rear gearbox mount. Got car supported on jack stands, and I've got the gearbox semi-supported at the moment, or rather the weight of the gearbox is being taken by the jack. So I need to start by removing this cover plate and working out the size of those bolts. I'm going to guess, if we have a look, those are, I want to say 13s or 14s. Oops. Yeah, we'll try for a 13. We'll bring the 14 along for the ride. So initial estimation was 13, and it is very tight under here despite having it raised up quite high. So 13, and we are 13. And yeah, definitely 13. So we'll loosen them gradually. I'll do this rear one here. I've got a feeling there's 4 of them. There's some on the other side of the exhaust here. There we are, so that one. I'm going to need both hands to do this, so I'm just going to put this down. So these ones are definitely a bit harder to get to. That rear one I can get to, but this one here, I'm going to see if I can get to it with the exhaust in position, or I'm going to need to move things around a bit. So I might be able to get to that with a universal joint extension. Let's see if I've got one. Because these two, easy. That one, not so easy. And that one is relatively easy. I've come to the conclusion that we're going to have to remove this exhaust bracket. So I don't have any spares, so I'll need to get a new exhaust bracket. And I've also removed this bracket here, which should hopefully allow this to move a little bit. But we need to soak this with some plus gas. So let's get that on the go. So I've actually come in from the side, which is a much easier place to work because there's just more space. So I've plus gassed the joint here, and I'm hoping that the exhaust will not necessarily separate, but be pliant enough to move so that I can get to the bolt. Now if I shed some light on the situation, hopefully we'll be able to see what I'm on about. So hang on a moment, let me get a better position. Sorry, I was too far forward. So yeah, there you go. So you can see there's the bolt there that I need to get to, and this heat shield is literally in the way, so you can't get to it because you're going up and around to there. So if I say, for example, let's try a 13. So let me see, I think I had a 1/4 inch around there somewhere. So I can't find it, but if you have a 1/4 inch 13 and you try get into there, even with a universal extension, a universal joint extension, you're not going to get the angle that you need. So that has been soaking for a little bit. I'm going to have a go at trying to remove it. At the top of this is, I think, at the feel of it, that might be an 8mm. That might be an 8mm bit at the top. So let's try and find an 8mm spanner. There's one, and let's pop that up onto top of this. There, there, I think. Hang on, there. Easier said than done. I think that's in. That might not be an 8mm, that might be smaller than an 8mm. Might even be bigger than an 8mm for all I know. Let's try that. So, bear with me, I'll just pause this. Size wrong, that one is 13, but the top one's actually 10. So I've put a 10mm socket onto the top because I've lost one of my 10mm spanners and I can't be bothered to go and get one if the socket will work just fine, which has just fallen off, so I'm probably going to need 2 hands for this. So I've got it off, but I have had to unfortunately angle grind it off because it just wasn't shifting any other way. Plus I couldn't work out if that top was a 9 or a 10, or more likely, just cool it down with some plus gas. There we go. If it was actually an imperial measurement, which would make sense given it's, you know, a Jaguar from that era, where sort of a mixture of imperial and metric was used, although, yeah, as you do still see some imperial measurements on this, despite it being mostly a metric car, there are still some imperial imperial bolts on it. Notably, funnily enough, the manifolds, downpiped manifold, is imperial. It looks like half of that is metric and half of it is actually imperial, so yeah, that's quite interesting. However, that is moving now, so that's a good sign. There we go, we'll have a look at that in a minute. Now hopefully that means that the rest of this should start moving also. So if I can shift this, I have to prise it off or move it somehow. So there's your joint there. So that should now be loose enough to move, and hopefully I'll be able to move that enough to get to that bolt I need to get to. See if I can get, so there it is there, that's your joint. That's the bit that's going to be tricky, I think. Right, let's get that over there. There we go, that's out of the way. And plus gas all around that. There we go. I'm going to move it gently with my foot, I think. So plus gas is just magic. So I've just beaten this a bit with a rubber mallet, and that's done exactly what I wanted it to. So that's come off of this joint. So you've got your olive in there, which is still there. That would then go up over that and clamp into place. So that now means that I can get to this bolt here. So that'll be fine just to hang there for a bit. And then what we'll do is, because we're not going to be moving the car for a bit, we'll cable tie this in place and get a new clamp that we can put onto it. We can leave it on the jack stands, that's not a problem. So I've got some other work to do under here. So this is just one of the jobs I need to do. I've got gearbox oil change, so some new fresh decks too, engine oil and engine coolant as well. So it's probably actually a good idea to leave it up on the stands. Right, let's get on to the next stage. So I need my 13, which will be around here somewhere. It's not that one, I can see it there, it's down there. So we'll grab the 13 and we'll get these out. So before you start undoing the bolts, you want to move your jack to actually under the mount itself, because the mount is under spring tension. So there is quite a bit of tension under there because there's a spring that's compressed. And you want to place another jack. This old Rover 800 scissor jack will do the job. You want to place that, probably with a block of wood on there, underneath the gearbox itself, just to support the weight of the gearbox and the engine. So we'll get that done now. So all 4 bolts are out. There are 2 longer ones which go on the, I think that side. This side is the shorter one. So you can see I've got scissor jack there supporting the gearbox with a block of wood. A few blocks of wood there. What I should be able to do now is lower this jack and take the tension off the spring. And that should lower the cradle and the mount itself, so I can change everything over that I need to change. So let's do this nice and gently. There we go. There we go, that's dropping down nicely. That'll be enough there. That will now allow me to have a look at what's going on in here. So you've got, there's your rear gearbox mounting plate. You can see the spring inside that large cup. So the cup at the top there. And you've got whole thing comes down like so, and there is no way I would have been able to get that out without taking the exhaust off, so it's a good job I took that off. Now, to get this out, I have to do a bit of wriggling about. If I put that sort of that way, like that, then I'll be able to lower it the rest of the way down on the jack. And there we go. So that's going to be a good clean up. That's the inside of it. We'll have a proper look once we've got it out. Oh, blimey, there's actually 2 springs. There's an inner spring which is held in by this arrangement, and then there is the smaller spring which has the bush and that. So let's bring those outside of the car and let's take a look at them. So here we are. Now, normally these are non-existent, but that annoyingly actually looks okay. So you've got the inner spring there, you've got all of that there, but that actually looks all right. So make sure we keep that, as we'll need that when we reassemble. So that sits obviously like that. So it's not just this smaller spring that's under tension, it's that larger one as well. So let's take this outside and Let's have a look at it. It weighs a fair amount. In fact, you can see some of the old bush there, so yeah, that would have been the previous bushing. So it looks like that's been replaced before. So let's have a look at what I've actually got. So I have a spring which would theoretically replace this one, although that looks smaller, so I'm sorry, that looks smaller. I'm not actually convinced that is the correct replacement. We do have this, which would, I guess, sit onto there. Nope, that actually sits all the way down the bottom, so it'll probably be worth cleaning all of this up anyway. And then we have this, which is that's the bushing. And that's actually a different type of bushing. This one's a nice solid rubber affair, whereas this one is a more squidgy foam setup. Well, that's annoying because that doesn't actually need replacing. So what I will do though is strip it apart, get this apart as well, just clean this up because that is quite flaky. Give it a bit of a paint and then put it back in. So I've given the area, especially the mounting points, a bit of rust proofing, seeing as I was in there. And the next stage is to actually get the mount lined up with the bolt holes. Now that is going to involve using this trolley jack, the block of wood, and then getting everything just mounted up. So I'm going to pause what I'm doing here, and you'll rejoin me when we're ready to bolt it back in. There's actually a couple of stages to getting it lined up. The first one is you want to have it lined up into the cup. That is very important. So if I just continue jacking this up a bit, so now that'll start to compress the spring. I'll actually take the weight off the exhaust as well. Next stage is to shift this like so to get this into position so I can start bolting it into place. And I think that is almost there. So this side is shorter bolts, if I remember rightly. Sorry, try and get this in so you can see what I'm doing. It is quite difficult to hold and do this at the same time. Hopefully that does move okay. Let's just move that back a bit. Come over a tad as well, actually. So this is the tough bit, is actually getting it all lined up and I might need 2 hands for this, so let's pause this a moment. That's better. So the problem I had is it hadn't fully jacked up, so you have to jack it up fully until you get it under tension, because this other side has got to come up, and once it's up you can actually move this ever so slightly just to get it aligned. So longer bolts on that side, so I'll just grab another long one, and I've got the rear one in, so that's in. Just put that front one in. You can see that goes up in there because there is a sort of a washery thing here which is actually hard on there. I need to, there we are. There we go, that should start engaging. Then I can get that last smaller one into place here. So there. Oh, there we go, that will go in. Right, let's grab a 13mm, which is all the way over here. There it is. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to start. Let's just start with this one at the front. There we go. So get that one not fully done up, but to at that point there. And then we'll do diagonally over there. I'm going to need an extra hand for that. So once everything is bolted back up on the mount, you can fit your exhaust back and put your new clamp over your exhaust joint here. Debatable if you want to use some exhaust seal or anything of that nature. Usually just the joint should be enough, or closing the joint, but obviously because it's now quite old I may actually seal it just to stop it blowing. So I'll probably put the seal actually inside here so that it seals. Obviously if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but we can certainly give it a go. And then obviously clamp everything back down, and that is pretty much done. Need to get this back onto here, so that's the front exhaust mount. That can go back on there. And there's a 10mm bolt, 10mm nut somewhere around here, which will fit back onto there. So we'll need to hunt that out. Can't be far because it's only just come off. And yeah, that is all that you need to do. If you were going to replace the mount itself, the spring would come out. There's a screw on the back which holds the spring in place, so the smaller spring. You would take those screws out, you would remove the spring and the foam mount, and then you'd clean it up and fit a new one. But this is probably the hardest part of the job, is actually getting it off and getting it on. Anyway, that's done now. So I'm just going to finish off the small bits that I've got to finish, so I might try and clamp that back on just so it stays in place. But yeah, for the moment, that's it. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.